We did not plant the green. It grew from what the war forgot. Child's Rhyme, Sector Kethro 6. Ilrin woke to breath. Not his. The dome above shimmered with filtered sunrise. Thin green light bled through layers of old glass, plastic, and faded sensor moss. Beyond the cracked canopy, mist shifted across shattered trees. The forest moved, not like wind, but like memory. Slow, careful, forgetful. He sat up. Something was watching him. No alarms sounded. No drones. The biocore grid, dormant for years, still showed stable pressure. The biomass around the habitat dome pulsed faintly in green tones, the universal signal for safe. But Ilrin's chest felt wrong. Not pain, not sickness, just pressure, like something had spoken to him in a dream and he'd failed to answer. The others were still asleep. For them now. He was the youngest. Once they had adults. Once they had rules. Now they had cycles, and whoever remembered to check the solar filters. Ilrin stood, slipped into the suit layer. Still too big. The material folded at the elbows, scraped at his ankles. The boots had been grown for someone taller. Someone else. But the bioskin adapted. It always had. He stepped out of the dome. Kethro. 6 had once been called the Garden Moon. Back when Dominion terraformers still believed in ideals. Before the war. Before the ashfall. Now the green was thick, aggressive, and unbalanced. Life grew fast here. Faster than it should. But the children had learned where not to walk. The vines that pulsed too loudly. The pools that remembered what blood tasted like. The tree that hummed at night. He passed them all. Toward the edge of the old field lines. There was a place the others didn't go. A low rise beneath a collapsed harvester. Overgrown. Uneven. Still warm, even when the nights were cold. Ilrin didn't know why he returned here. Only that something always pulled. Today, the pull was stronger. He climbed, brushed aside the thick ferns. And there, as always, lay the thing. The suit. Larger than any the children had seen. Charred. Twisted. Still sealed. It had no faceplate. Only a curved metal scar across its helmet. Burned in a shape that looked like language. He'd seen it before. Not in real life. In dreams. He crouched. Reached forward. Touched the chest plate. Cold. Then, warm. Just one pulse. Then silence. But it was enough. His name. Inside his skull. Whispered by nothing. Ilrin. He staggered back. Fell into the moss. The suit did not move. But inside his breath, something else did. You found me. Children remember differently. They do not sort the truth from the myth. They were both as skin. Pre-collapse memoir. A dome without elders. Ilrin didn't run back to the dome. He walked, slowly, as though any sudden motion would cause the echo in his skull to speak again. But it didn't. The voice had said only one thing. His name. Ilrin. Not shouted. Not electronic. Soft. Like someone kneeling behind his breath and reminding him. I remember you. Even if you don't remember me. Inside the dome, morning routines had begun. For children, all older than him, all worn by cycles of watching everything break slowly. They moved like animals pacing old cages, checking the same nutrient blocks, rotating the moss tiles, looking at blinking lights that meant nothing anymore. Riv saw him first, taller than the rest. 12 cycles, maybe 13. She cleaned tools without needing to be asked, and distrusted anything that changed. Where were you? She asked. Ilrin hesitated. Near the old harvester. Again, I touched the armor. 3 heads turned. Silence. Riv stood slowly. You what? It had spoke. She stared at him. Not angrily. Just blankly. Ilrin, she said, stop it. He stepped forward. I didn't make it up. It said my name. The armor's dead. There's nothing left inside it. He shook his head, but it warmed, just for a second, and it knew me. Tarn, the smallest of the others, laughed nervously. He's playing again, like when he said the tree sang to him. It did sing, Ilrin snapped. It was a vent leak, Riv muttered. You've got too much time alone. Ilrin's hands curled into fists. Why don't any of you want it to be true? Because if it's true, said Riv. That means something's finally waking up, and not everything that wakes up wants us alive. The silence that followed was heavy, not angry, just tired, because none of them had ever asked to be left behind, and none of them had ever been told why they still lived. But before anyone could speak again, the central column in the dome flickered. Once, twice, then held steady. An old screen. No one used it. Its glass was cracked, its speaker fried, but the light came through anyway. A message. No header, no sector tag, no system ID, just a phrase. Pilot recognized. Ilrin stepped back. The others froze. Riv turned to him slowly. What did you say it said to you? My name. And then what? Nothing. Just silence. A low pulse rippled through the dome. Not a sound, not a shake, a feeling, as though something under their feet had briefly remembered what it was like to breathe. Riv walked to the screen, touched it. Nothing changed. The phrase remained, but it wasn't repeating. It was waiting. She looked at Ilrin. You did something. I just touched the chest plate. That armor hasn't powered in 30 cycles. It did. A little. I felt it. Riv turned back to the screen. Then it's not dead. A shriek echoed outside. All of them turned. Through the dome's fractured windows, something moved. Fast. Not running. With purpose. Not toward them. Away. Deep into the forest. Ilrin's heart thudded. Something else felt it too. The pulse came again. Stronger. One of the biolights popped overhead. The moss on the inner walls rippled. Not in wind, but nervousness. The dome was alive, and it was afraid. We need to go back there, Ilrin whispered. Riv shook her head. We need to seal the dome. That thing outside wasn't one of ours. It didn't come from us. It came from the forest. That's worse. But Ilrin was already at the door. I think the armor's waiting. Not for all of us. Just for me. Behind him, the central column's screen changed. New text. Memory sync available. Do you accept? None of the children touched it. But the signal didn't vanish. And in the deep jungle beyond the dome, a second suit powered for the first time in decades. No one had worn it since the Silence War. But now it whispered into the earth. One has been found. More will follow. A child does not inherit memory, but the machine remembers for them, until they are ready to feel it. Fragment from the Testament's neural lattice, classified. Ilrin didn't tell the others he was leaving. He woke before the first pulse, before the dome lights blinked in their tired rhythm, before Riv would ask where he was going, before Tarn would pretend to laugh, before the dome remembered it was still pretending to be safe. He slipped through the moss curtain at the southern arch, boots soft against the wet root tiles. The early light was weak. Everything outside still smelled like sleeping dirt. The climb to the Harvester Rise felt shorter this time. Not because he was faster, because something pulled. The field bent around him just slightly. Leaves shifted direction as he walked. By the time he reached the ruin, the armor was already waiting. Not different, not standing, still broken, still fused to the soil, but awake. He didn't hesitate. He knelt beside it, placed both hands on the scarred chest plate. It felt warmer than before, not like metal, like flesh just beneath the surface. A light pulsed from the base of the neck seam. Faint, deep violet. He inhaled. I accept, he whispered. The light blinked once. Pain didn't come, not directly, but something else did. First, a sound, not through ears, through bones. Impact, metal striking metal. Screams muffled by vacuum. Then rage. Old, controlled. A battle rhythm, never taught, but pulsing inside him like a heartbeat made of memory. Then silence. A long, hollow silence. Not absence. Aftermath. He gasped, fell back into the moss. His lungs refused to fill. His hands shook, and for a moment, his mind was full of someone else's grief. He didn't know the name, but he knew the loss. The armor remained still, but something in its spine flexed. A plate adjusted. It hadn't moved in years. Now it twitched, like a body remembering how to breathe. Ilrin stepped closer. What are you? He asked. The reply wasn't verbal. It rose through him. Words made of instinct. Interface. Containment. Echo carrier. I was built to hold the lost. Hold what? Testament. Fragments of what was erased. He didn't understand. Not yet. But the armor reached out. Not with arms. They still lay frozen beneath ivy. With attention. A presence that stepped inside his breath. Not forcing. Inviting. You are young, it said. But you remember without knowing. That is what we were made for. Ilrin placed his palm on the inner neckline. The bioskin of his suit reacted. Opened. Exposed a thin layer of living thread, shimmering like woven bloodlight. It pulsed once. Neural sync incomplete, it said. Pilot unknown. Genetic overlap, 17%. Accepting provisional connection. And then, heat. Not painful. Heavy. Like someone laying across his shoulders, whispering a single name over and over in a forgotten tongue. He stumbled back again. His vision blurred. The sky above him shifted. Not with clouds. With shapes. Half-buried silhouettes in the distance began to rise. Forms he'd thought were wreckage. Shadows that had been still for decades. Now one of them turned. A helmet glinted once in the dappled green light. And then, Unit 04 awakening, the voice said behind his eyes. Signal response forming. Ilrin wasn't alone, and for the first time in his life. He didn't want to be. You do not inherit pain, but some legacies are not offered. They are transferred by weight. Veiled protocol, Codex Reforger. The armor moved. Not with grace. Not with speed. Its plates shifted like stone waking from dream. Lichen peeled from its joints. Moss curled back from the exposed sockets. And something within its chest began to glow. Not violently, but like a candle relit in ruins. Ilrin stood motionless. The neural thread still pulsed at his wrist, trailing from his skin to the armor's open port. He could feel its breath now. Not air, not machine exhaust, but rhythm, like a voice breathing without lungs. Upload sequence at 19%, the voice said softly. Memory chain corrupted. Restoration requires witness. Ilrin whispered, What does that mean? You must see what was taken. You must carry what remains. He nodded, not because he understood, but because something in him already knew this was not the beginning. It was the resumption of a promise he never made. The world around him darkened, not by shadow, by memory. His eyes stayed open, but his vision shifted. The jungle fell away. The sky turned to iron, and he stood on a battlefield he had never seen. Bodies, burning sky, a banner flapping in static wind, a white scar drawn through ash. He looked down, his hands, not his, gloved in armor, heavy, shaking, a rifle in one, a name etched into the back of the other. 27 / Lanet / Inheritor. He tried to breathe, but lungs wouldn't move. Not his lungs, not his fear. This was someone else's end, and he was only inhabiting the moment of it. Explosions echoed nearby. Buildings collapsed, their architecture unrecognizable, curved, towering, made from organic stone and humming wire. A voice crackled in his ear. Unit Reforger 27, fall back to the line. The chorus has breached through the silence veil. He turned. Others ran past him, more suits, more scars, one limping, one carrying another. The sky roared. And then, a shape descended. Not a ship, a creature. No wings, no legs. A twisting cathedral of living light and crystal. A chorus being, Ilrin, or whoever he was now, lifted his rifle. Fired. The blast passed through the creature. It sang, not with voice, with judgment. Pain lanced through Ilrin's skull. He fell backward. Vision snapped. He was in the jungle again, breathing hard, hands covered in moss, tears in his eyes. The armor stood fully now, bent slightly, one knee shaking, shoulder warped, but standing. It turned its helm toward him, spoke not aloud, but directly into his nervous system. He died asking the wrong question. Ilrin gasped. What question? He asked, what did they do to us? Instead of, what did we choose to become? The suit's core dimmed. But the connection held. Was it worth it? It asked softly. Ilrin didn't answer, because he didn't know who we were yet. But his chest felt heavier than it had in his entire life. Not from fear, from weight, from legacy. In the trees beyond, a shimmer of motion passed. Another armor unit, half submerged, crawling, and somewhere deeper, a voice like Cyril's, but older, cracked, whispering a different name. Ilrin turned, faced the suit beside him. Do you remember them all? No, it replied, but I remember the ones who forgot. Truth does not ask permission. It only waits for someone unguarded enough to carry it. Redacted entry, Neural Vault A1, Post-War Archives. Ilrin knelt beside the armor as it stood in fragments of green. The connection thread still hummed softly in his wrist, but now it pulsed in rhythm with his breath. Not his heartbeat, his breath, like the suit was exhaling through him. Can you walk? He asked it aloud. It answered, not with words, but by bending slightly, unlocking its knees, and shifting weight on a moss-covered feet. Metal groaned. Vines snapped. The sound wasn't mechanical. It was ritual. Ilrin stood as well. The moss slipped under his boots, but the earth felt different now. He wasn't standing alone. He reached for the suit's arm, not to help it, but to steady himself. The metal was warm now, almost flesh-like but harder. The suit responded. Neural thread stabilized. Pilot recognition, 17% match. Core protocol unlocked. Partial. Ilrin blinked. What does that mean? You are not the original. I know, but you remember in ways they did not. A soft light bloomed from the suit's inner chest. Not a weapon, not a command. A window. Images flickered, layered, glitching, inconsistent. Warning, this sequence is classified. Access restricted. Ilrin touched the light. It did not resist. Vision took him again, but not like before. This time, the world didn't replace itself. It overlaid his own. The forest remained, but over it, shadows. Burned cities, craters the size of oceans. He walked forward and saw buildings collapsing in reverse, reconstructing into living forms before crumbling again. Voices screamed behind the trees. Not pain, guilt. The armor spoke. Do you want to know what they tried to erase? Ilrin whispered. Yes. He stood in a circular chamber now. He didn't know how he'd arrived. Its walls were black. No doors. No roof. Just a column of light. Inside the light, 3 people. Not human, but not alien. Their faces were fluid, shifting slightly as if shaped by the thoughts of the one observing. They turned toward him in perfect sync and spoke together. The humans were not erased. They were unremembered. Ilrin stepped back, but the suit held him, not physically, with need. They didn't destroy us to win a war, the voices continued. They destroyed us to cleanse a truth. Ilrin cried out. What truth? The light twisted. The chamber shook. A 4th figure appeared, not in the light. Behind him, wearing a suit like his, but fully armed, face hidden, and Ilrin recognized the scar. Same mark as the armor he had touched. The figure stepped forward and whispered, I did what I was ordered to do. I made them forget us. But I could not forget you. The light shattered. Reality surged back. Ilrin dropped to the ground. He was still in the jungle, still beside the armor. But he was shaking, crying, not from fear, from overload. The armor stepped beside him, placed one hand on his shoulder. Its voice was softer now, human even. You were never meant to carry this. But you're the only one who can. Ilrin looked up. The canopy had parted, not broken, peeled back like a curtain. Above, the sky pulsed once with a faint white arc. Another scar, drawn not in metal, but in light. Why me? He whispered. The armor replied. Because you still feel the weight of someone else's name. Ilrin rose slowly. His bones ached. His heart raced. But his body knew what to do. He didn't speak again. He simply walked. And the armor followed. Not behind him. Beside him. Some returns are not for reunion. They are to see what stayed behind when you left. Field Psalm. Reforged Pilgrim Records. The walk back to the dome fell shorter. The forest didn't resist. It parted where it once tangled. Even the sun, filtered through mist and canopy, seemed to pulse in rhythm with his breath. The armor moved beside him without sound. Its steps did not crack branches. Its frame no longer hissed. It wasn't hiding. It was home. As the dome came into view, Ilrin slowed. The lights were on. All of them. No power cycle should have allowed that. The moss along the surface had changed color, a deep, uncertain blue. And the door was already open. He stepped through. The others were awake. All of them, standing in a half-circle around something. No one spoke. They looked not at Ilrin, but at what stood in the center of the habitat floor. Another suit. This one was smaller, sleeker, less scarred, but no less ancient. Its core plate pulsed dimly. No helmet. Its face hollow, empty, but a single word flickered in red across the chest. Ilrin. Riv turned slowly, her expression unreadable. It said your name before you arrived. He nodded. It's not mine, but it remembers me. He approached. The suit didn't move, but his armor, the one he'd returned with, stopped 2 steps behind, as if waiting to be invited in. Ilrin reached out, placed his hand on the new suit's chest. It was cold, but not unresponsive. A light flared beneath the floor tiles. Thin white lines, like roots of light, spiraled out from the contact point, up the walls, through the ceiling, into the sky, and the dome's old central screen lit for the first time in years. One phrase, cycle ready for closure. Will you carry what was lost? Ilrin turned to the others. None of them moved. None of them spoke. But in their silence, in their open hands, wide eyes, stillness, he saw the same thing. Willingness. Even if they didn't understand, even if they couldn't bear it, they knew he would. He pressed both hands to the second suit's core. Whispered, yes. Far above the dome, a long-forgotten orbital satellite reactivated. A signal burst outward, silent and unclaimed. But deep in the void, a dozen points of light turned slightly. Shifted. Noticed. The line had moved. The scar had been redrawn. And Ilrin had begun a journey older than himself. Subscribe to HFY Chronicles. Continue the journey in the full playlist, Chronicles of the Lost.